The Human Centipede. Alright, let's start with a movie so disgusting that the plot description alone is enough to make you consider giving up movies entirely. The Human Centipede is a Dutch horror film by Tom Six, whose entire pitch meeting probably consisted of him walking into a room and saying, "So, imagine 3 people, but connected." The story follows a mad scientist who kidnaps tourists and surgically connects them, mouth to butt, in a chain. Yes, that's the movie. When it came out, most countries reacted the same way your brain is reacting right now. Pure horror and regret. It was banned in the UK, Australia, and several other countries for sexual violence and being a crime against humanity in cinematic form. The UK even allowed a heavily censored version at one point, which basically meant cutting out everything that made it the Human Centipede. So you just ended up with a short film about a weird German guy who really likes sewing. When it hit the internet, it went viral. Not in a box office success kind of way, but in a, hey, want to see something that will permanently delete your appetite. College dorms, friend groups, and horror forums passed it around like a cursed videotape. There were 2 types of viewers. People who watched it and immediately regretted it, and people who pretended they didn't regret it so they could look cool. The director claims he thought of the idea as a joke during a conversation about punishing child predators, which is honestly one of those jokes where you go, okay, but maybe don't put that on film. But instead he said, no, I'll make a trilogy. Because clearly one movie wasn't enough to ruin Thanksgiving dinners for a decade. Instead of disappearing quietly into the what the hell was that vault of cinema, Tom Six doubled down. We got The Human Centipede 2, which was black and white but somehow more disgusting, and The Human Centipede 3, set in a prison with 500 people sewn together. At that point, it stopped being about horror and started feeling like performance art if that art was designed to make you call your therapist. The Dictator. Switching gears from body horror to political chaos, we have Sacha Baron Cohen's The Dictator. Cohen, famous for Borat, decided to create a satirical comedy about a fictional North African dictator named Admiral General Aladdin, a man who's basically every terrible world leader combined into one ego-driven disaster. The movie mocks dictatorship, censorship, human rights violations, basically a checklist of things that make real dictators really angry. And guess what? They got angry. It was banned in several Middle Eastern countries before it even came out, including Egypt, Syria, and most famously North Korea. Although North Korea bans everything that isn't government propaganda. In Turkmenistan, officials didn't even watch the movie before banning it. They just heard the title and went, nope. The plot involves Aladdin visiting the US, losing his identity, working in a health food store, and then marrying Anna Faris. And somehow, in between those plot points, it manages to roast both dictatorships and Western capitalism at the same time. A bunch of countries banned this movie before it even released, not because they watched it, but because they assumed it was gonna dunk on them. Which, to be fair, it absolutely does. North Korea banned it immediately. No surprise there if Kim Jong-un sees a comedy trailer and there isn't at least one statue of him in it, he's not greenlighting it. In Egypt, it was briefly screened, but then quickly pulled after protests, because apparently Aladdin looked a little too familiar to people in power. Sacha Baron Cohen leaned into it hard. At the 2012 Oscars, he showed up in full dictator costume, carrying an urn supposedly filled with Kim Jong-il's ashes, and intentionally spilled them all over Ryan Seacrest on the red carpet. That single moment got more media coverage than half the actual award speeches. There's a scene where Aladdin gives a speech saying, "Imagine a country where the top 1% controls all the wealth." And the audience in the movie is silent because they realize he's literally describing the United States.
Why are you guys so anti-dictators? Imagine if America was a dictatorship. You could let 1% of the people have all the nation's wealth. You could help your rich friends get richer by cutting their taxes and bailing them out when they gamble and lose. You could ignore the needs of the poor for healthcare and education. Your media would appear free, but would secretly be controlled by one person and his family. You could wiretap phones. You could torture foreign prisoners.
American Sniper. American Sniper is one of those films where you walk out of the theater thinking, wow, that was intense. And then you open Twitter and realize you've accidentally stepped into a political debate you didn't even want to be in. Directed by Clint Eastwood and starring Bradley Cooper, the movie tells the story of Chris Kyle, the most lethal sniper in US military history. And by lethal, I mean 160 confirmed kills. That's not a Call of Duty score. That's his actual military record. The film was meant to be a tribute and emotional, gritty look at the Iraq War and the toll it takes on soldiers. The controversy was loaded into the chamber before the first showing even started. On one side, people saw it as a patriotic masterpiece, a film that honored the sacrifices of soldiers and told an important story. On the other side, critics accused it of being pro-war propaganda, oversimplifying the Iraq conflict and ignoring civilian casualties. It got banned in Iraq outright because, well, the main antagonist is basically any Iraqi insurgent. Egypt also pulled it from theaters after protests, and in the US, while it wasn't banned, it became a cultural battlefield. Also, fun fact, the fake baby in one scene became its own mini-scandal. There's a moment where Bradley Cooper is holding a clearly plastic doll, and the internet lost its mind. People were tweeting things like, "Nothing takes you out of a war movie faster than a $12 Toys R Us baby." So while American Sniper might have been aiming for realism, that prop baby made it look like the army was fighting a war in the Playmobil universe. Cannibal Holocaust, the movie that got its director arrested. If Human Centipede was a bad idea, Cannibal Holocaust looked at that and said, "Hold my jungle machete." This is one of the first found-footage horror films decades before the Blair Witch Project. It's about a film crew traveling to the Amazon to document tribes. And discovering the tribes are not here for it. The special effects were so realistic, Italian police thought the cast had actually been murdered. The director was arrested for making a snuff film and had to bring the actors to court to prove they were still alive. But that's not even the worst part. This movie actual animals on camera, which is why it's banned in several countries to this day. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now let's talk about one of the most infamous horror films of all time, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Despite the title, there are surprisingly few chainsaws and not a lot of massacre compared to modern horror standards. But in the 1970s, this movie was like strapping audiences to a chair and forcing them to watch their nightmares in HD. The plot follows a group of friends who stumble across a family of cannibals in rural Texas, including the now iconic Leatherface, a man who wears a mask made of human skin. It was banned in the UK, Australia, and several other countries for extreme violence and terror, despite the fact that most of the gore is actually implied. But the editing, sound design, and sheer chaos of the film made it feel 10 times worse. In fact, in the UK, it became part of the infamous Video Nasties list, a group of films so disturbing that owning them could get you arrested. That's right, having a VHS of Leatherface in your house in the 80s was basically contraband. The movie was banned because it broke the golden rule of horror. Back then, horror was supposed to be fun and campy, not a psychologically scarring endurance test. And this movie felt real, which made it even more terrifying. The Da Vinci Code. Dan Brown's best-selling book was already controversial for suggesting Jesus had a secret bloodline. The movie adaptation doubled the drama. It got banned or censored in places like India, China, and the Philippines for hurting religious feelings. Ironically, all that outrage just made more people read the book and watch the movie, hoping to uncover hidden truths. Well, the truth was mostly Tom Hanks running through museums like he's late for his flight. Pink Flamingos. The movie your parents still don't want to talk about. If you've never seen Pink Flamingos, congratulations, you still have a shred of innocence left. Directed by John Waters, it's a campy, trashy, outrageous comedy about people competing for the title of filthiest person alive. It has scenes so gross that even describing them here would get me demonetized. Let's just say it's the kind of movie where you finish watching and immediately want to take a shower, call your therapist, and maybe a priest. It was banned in multiple countries, became a cult classic, and is living proof that sometimes the point of art is just to see how far you can push an audience before they break. The gods must be crazy. When a Coke bottle started a culture war. This is a comedy about a Kalahari bushman who finds a Coca-Cola bottle dropped from an airplane and thinks it's a gift from the gods. The bottle causes chaos in his tribe, leading him on a journey to throw it away at the end of the world. It's wholesome in parts, but it also has outdated stereotypes about indigenous people, which got it banned or criticized in some countries. Still, it's a fascinating look at how a single piece of modern trash can turn an entire society upside down, and a reminder that Coke's marketing really does reach everywhere.